Now Snowball will read Father of the Niben. What is a Niben? Father of the Niben. Translated with commentary by Florian Jalil. Introduction. Writing the biography of anyone is a challenge. Usually the problem lies in assessing one's sources, comparing the prejudices of one chronicle versus another, versus another. Weguin Jarth, I have been told in writing his well-regarded series on the Wolf Queen of Solitude, used over 100 contemporary narratives. I cannot complain about my task having a similar issue. There is but one record of the man called Topal the Pilot, the earliest known Aldmer explorer of Tamriel. Only 4 short verse fragments of the epic Father of the Niben have survived to present day, but they offer an interesting, if controversial, look at the Middle Merethic era, when Topal the Pilot may have sailed the seas around Tamriel. Though Father of Niben is the only written record of Topal the Pilot's voyages, it is not the only proof of his existence. Among the treasures of the great crystal tower of Somerset Isle are his crude but fascinating maps, his legacy to all Tamriel, the translation of the Aldmeri Udhendra Nabinu, Father of Niben, is my own, and I accept that other scholars may disagree with some of my choice of words. I cannot promise my translation lives up to the beauty of the original. I have only strived for simple coherence. Fragment 1. Second ship, the Pasquinelli, manned by pilot Ilio, was to follow the southern pointing Waystone, and the third, the Niben, manned by pilot Topal, was to follow the northeast. Pointing Waystone, the orders from the crystal tower, they were to sail forth for 80 moons and then return to Tel. Only Niben returned to Firsthold, laden high with gold and spice and fur, and strange creatures, dead and live. Though, alas, old, Alhephony, Topal never found he, told the tales of the lands he had visited to the wonderment of all. For 66 days and nights he sailed over crashing waves of dire intent, past whirlpools, through mist that burned like fire, until he reached the mouth of a great bay, and he landed on a sun-kissed meadow of gentle dells. As he and his men rested, there came a fearsome howl, and hideous orcs streamed forth from the murky glen, cannibal teeth clotted with gore. For centuries, strange crystalline balls were unearthed at sites of ancient Aldmer shipwrecks and docks, particular artifacts of Merethic and Dawn eras that puzzled archaeologists until it was demonstrated that each had a tendency to rotate on its axis in a specific direction. There were 3 varieties, one that pointed southward, one that pointed northward, and one that pointed northwest. It is not understood how they worked, but they seemed attuned to particular lines of power. These were the waystones of the fragment, with which each of the pilots used to point their craft in the direction they were assigned to go. A ship with a name not mentioned in the fragment took his vessel northwest towards Tharis and Yokuda. The Pasquiniel took the southern waystone and must have sailed down towards Pandonia. Topal and his northeast waystone found the mainland of Tamriel. It is clear from this fragment what the three ships were assigned to do: find a passage back to Old Ephelny, so that the Aldmer now living in Somerset could learn what became of their old homeland. And this book is intended to be a study of Topal the pilot. There is scarcely room to dedicate to different theories of the Aldmeri exodus from Old Ephelny. Maybe it's El Nofi. El Nofi, that's it. If I was using this poem as my only source, I would have to agree with the scholars who believe in the tradition that several ships left Old Ephelny. No. Damn. Ephelny. El Nofi. El Nofi. And were caught in a storm. Those who survived found their way to Somerset Isle, but without their waystones they did not know what direction their homeland was. After all, what other expedition is there for three ships heading in three opposite directions to find a place? Naturally, only one of the ships returned, and we do not know if either or both of the other two found Old El Nofi, or perished at sea or at the hands of ancient Panedonians, Slode, or Eucadans. We must assume, unless we think the Aldmer particularly idiotic, that at least one of them must have been pointed in the right direction. It may well have been the Topal. It may well have been Topal, and he simply did not go northeast far enough. So Topal, setting sail from Firsthold, heads northeast, which coincidentally is the longest one can travel along the Abyssinian Sea without striking land of any kind. Had he traveled straight east, he would have struck the mainland somewhere in what is now the Colovian west of Cyrodiil in a few weeks. Had he traveled southeast, he might have reached the hump of Valenwood in a few days, but our pilot, judging by his own and our modern maps, sailed in a straight line northeast, through the Abyssinian Sea and into the Iliac Bay, before touching ground somewhere near present-day Anticlary in 2 months' time. The rolling verdant hills of southern High Rock are unmistakable in this verse, recognizable to anyone who has been there. The question, of course, is what is to be made of this apparent reference to orcs occupying the region. Tradition has it the orcs were not born until after Aldmer had settled the mainland, and they sprung up as a distant race following the famous battle between Trinamac and Boethia at the time of Resdan. Oops. It is possible that the tradition is wrong. Perhaps the orcs were an aboriginal tribe predating the Aldmeri colonization. Perhaps these were a cursed folk, Orsimer, and the Altmeris, the same word for orc, of a different kind, whose name was to be given the orcs in a different era. It is regrettable that the fragment ends here. For more clues, the truth are undoubtedly lost. What's missing between the first fragment and the second is appreciable. It must be more than 80 months that have passed, because Topal is on the opposite side of the mainland, Tamriel now, attempting to sail southwest to return to Firsthold after his failure to find old El Nofi. El Nofi. Hell Nofi. Fragment 2. No passage westward could be found in the steely cliffs that jutted up like giant's jaw. So Niben sailed south. As it passed a sandy forested island that promised sanctuary and peace, the crew cheered in joy. Then exultation turned to terror as a great shadow rose. From the trees on leathered wings like unfurling cape, the great bat lizard was large as a ship, but good pilot Topal merely raised his bow and struck it in its head. As it fell, he asked his bosun, "Do you think it's dead?" And before it struck the white-bearded waves, he shot once more its heart, to be certain. And so for another 40 days and 6, the Niben sailed south. Wow, how long is this? Fragment 3. We can see that in addition to Topal's prowess as a navigator, cartographer, survivalist, and raconteur, he is a master of archery. It may be poetic license, of course, but we do have archaeological proof that the Merithic Aldmer were sophisticated archers. Their bows of layers of wood and horn, drawn by silver silk thread, are beautiful, and still I have heard experts say millennia later, very deadly. It is tempting to imagine a dragon, but the creature that Topal faces at the beginning of this fragment sounds like an ancestor of the cliff racer of present-day Morrowind. The treacherous cliff coastline sounds like the region around Necrom, and the island of Gorn may be where the nest of the bat lizard is. No creature like that exists in Eastern Morrowind, to my knowledge, at the present day. Fragment 3. The fetid evil swamplands and their human lizards retreated to the east, and Topal and his men's hearts were greatly gladdened by the sight of diamond blue, pure sweet ocean. For 3 days they sailed in great cheer northwest, where Firsthold beckoned them, but hope died. In horror as land, like a blocking shield, rose before them. Topal the pilot was sore, wroth, and consulted he the maps he had faithfully drawn to see whether best to go south where the continent must end, or take the river that snaked through a passage north. "North," cried he to his sad men, "north we go now. Fear not, north." Damn. Tracing Topal's movements, we see that he has skirted the edge of Morrowind and delved into southern Blackmarsh, seemingly determined to follow his waystone as best he can. The swamp he is leaving is probably near present-day Gideon. Knowing that, we now know that Topal's personality, we can understand his frustration in the bay between Blackmarsh and elsewhere. Here is a man who follows his orders explicitly and knows that he should have been going southeast through the river ways to reach Firsthold. Looking at his maps, we can see that he attempted to find passages through as he has mapped out the inner sea of Morrowind and several of the swampy tributaries of Blackmarsh. no doubt being turned away by the disease and fierce Argonian tribes that dissuaded many other explorers after him. With a modern map of Tamriel in hand, we can see that he makes the wrong choice in electing to go northeast instead of pushing southward. He could not have known then what he perceived to be the endless mainland that was only a jutting peninsula. He only knew that he had traveled too far southward already, and so he made a smart but incorrect decision to go up the river. It is ironic that this great miscalculation would today bear his mark of history. The bay he thought was on endless ocean is now known as Topal Bay, and the river that took him astray shares the name of his boat, the Niben River. Fragment 4. The cat demons of 4 legs and 2 ran the river's length, always keeping the boat in their green-eyed sight, hissing and spitting and roaring with rage. But the sailors had never had to brave the shores, for fruit trees welcomed them, dropping their arms down to the river's edge, as if to embrace the myrrh, and the men took the fruit quickly before the cats could pounce. For 11 days they traveled north, until they came to a crystalline lake and 8 islands of surpassing beauty and peace. Brilliant, flightful creatures of glorious colors greeted them in Aldmeri language, making the Mer wonder until they understood they were only calling back the words they were speaking without understanding it, and then the sailors laughed. Topal the pilot was enchanted with the islands and the feathered men who lived there. There the Niben stayed for a moon, and the bird men learned how to speak with their own words, and with taloned feet to write. In joy for their new knowledge, they made Topal their lord, giving him their island for the gift. Topal said he would return someday, but first he must find the passage east to Firsthold, so far away. This last fragment is bittersweet for a number of reasons. We know that the strange, friendly, feathered people the pilot encounters will be lost, in fact. This poem is the only one where mention is made of the bird creatures of Cyrodiil. The literacy that Topal gives them is evidently not enough to save them from their eventual fate, likely at the hands of the cat demons, who we may assume are ancient Khajiit. Hey, we know that Topal and his crew never find a route from the 8 islands, which are the modern-day imperial city, through the Iliac Bay. His maps tell the tale where this last poem cannot. We see his hand as he traces his route up the Niben to Lake Runmare, and after attempting a few tributaries which do not lead him where he wants to go, we can imagine Topal's frustration and that of his long-suffering crew as they returned back down the Niben to Topal Bay. There they evidently discovered their earlier mistake, for we see that they passed the peninsula of Elsewhere, eventually traveled along its coastline past the shores of Valenwood, and eventually came home. Usually epic tales end with a happy ending, but this one begins with one, and the means to which it was accomplished is lost. Besides the extraordinary bird creatures of present-day Cyrodiil, we have caught glimpses of ancient orcs, perhaps, ancient cliff racers, ancient Argonians, and in this fragment, ancient Khajiit. Quite a history in a few lines of simple verse, all because a man failed to find his home and took all the wrong turns to retrace his steps back. Hey, how rude. Have a good day. Bye-bye.